I already know what happened. You came to your kid's soccer tournament here in Williamsport and you had a really long day in the sun. So you were on your phone and you were looking at Zillow because you love real estate. You're a real estate investor. You always look at real estate and you were shocked. You were shocked when you saw like 9 units trading for $200,000 to $300,000. Saw our average cap rate on the MLS was 11%, and you got excited. All of a sudden, junior soccer goal didn't really rank. So I know what happened. You had a ton of energy as you drove your family back home in the minivan, and it's Monday morning. And you're calling me, Jen Rollins, a real estate investment educator, advocate, and owner at the region's largest property management company in the Williamsport region, One Focus Property Management. There's a lot of people from out of town in town. My voicemail box on Monday mornings is often with people who say, I am so excited about your market. I need to find a property manager though, because I don't live there. And I've had this conversation so many times, I thought, I'm going to make a little video and just explain to you really quickly the things you need to know if you're from out of town about my market here and what it takes to be successful in real estate investment. First, the bad, flood zones. You need to know about flood zones if you want to rent in my market. This is a river valley. Let me show you. See that? See where I'm at? I mean, they're not real mountains like you have other places, but there are mountains. And there's a river back here behind me, and we're in river valleys. Streams and rivers are everywhere, and our properties are zoned by FEMA to be in different flood zones. And depending on what flood zone you're in, if the property has a loan on it, you may be required to carry flood insurance. So clock that in your mind. Know that now. I myself am convinced that climate change is very real. Storms are getting more severe and flooding is getting more severe. So I look at flood zones very carefully, but our out-of-town investors don't often understand that may be why a property is valued so lowly. The next thing you really need to know is municipal requirements. So again, I don't know how it operates where you are. And around here, we often have the assumption that there's just no local licenses and things like that. But there are. Most municipalities, the cities, boroughs, townships, have what's called a rental ordinance. And it requires, for the most part, basic health and safety inspections on some sort of cadence. And it could be registering of you, the property owner, emergency contacts if you're not local, and sometimes tenant registration. So you have to know this, because if you just buy a property here in my market and think you're going to operate it without having a local license, you're going to be caught off guard. This is a really small town. I often call it fancily a tertiary market, but it's a really small town and it's hard to get things done. So what that means is people who are from here don't necessarily welcome working with outsiders. They're not excited to get a call from, say, Connecticut from somebody saying, oh yeah, I want to work with you and have this work done. These are people who enjoy living in a small town and doing things in a small town way, which often means a more personal connection. And this is something I've seen investors struggle with. They struggle with buying a property, having every intention and ability, to invest in it, to do capital improvements and renovations. And that is really difficult for them to build good, strong vendor relationships here. It's something that I came in from outside this market not understanding. I started my business now over 12 years ago, and I have a robust vendor network now. It has taken huge amounts of time and money to attract and retain the best possible vendors in my market. And it's a moving target, honestly. And vendors are so important because one thing that's different about my market that is, I think, a negative to it, our housing stock is just super old. And that means these properties are at a minimum, usually 100 years old. That just brings a whole new set of challenges. Things that you're working on weren't made to current codes, different kinds of materials, longevity aside, because new materials often have longevity problems, but they are not straight. They were done in piecemeal over the years. It's often a huge undertaking to do renovations on this historic property. And finding the people who can do that kind of work. See, my business, we're always looking for people who can do repairs and vendors and whatnot. And we're right almost next to a trade school, Penn College of Technology. And they produce a ton of people for the construction and building industry. But what's so interesting is they're teaching, as I call it, brand new 2x4 construction over there. These guys know what they're doing with straight lines and things up to code. They don't know what to do with an 1880 Victorian mansion. That's a lot of negative. That's a lot of hey, I don't think you're going to want to invest here, but there's so much good about my market if you can navigate that. And so here's the good stuff. Property is so cheap to get. I would blow your mind with how cheap you can get into multi-unit property here. In a lot of markets, you're not getting anything with 2 or more units for less than $500,000. And when I tell you you can get 2 units often for $100,000 here, I'm not kidding. The central Pennsylvania market is generally stable. I mean, we do have the effects of the larger macro economy, but our microeconomy is stable. Now, is it setting the world on fire? No. But when other markets are having these big fluctuations, I always say central Pennsylvania just slips along like a little garden snake. So we do have some ups and downs, but in general, we feel it just to a lesser degree. And I like that because I'm risk averse. So whenever you can stabilize something, that means money to me. One of the best things about this being a small town is that it's really easy to get ahead here. You don't have to work that hard. I say all the time, I'm a hyper-productive person. I love to be at the top of my game, but it's really not often good for me from a mental health perspective. And so I really don't work more than like 50 hours a week here in my role as broker and owner of my company. And even this work I do online, I'm not logging a ton of hours, but I am outworking and outperforming anybody else who's trying to do property management in my region. And in a small town, it's not hard to make your properties stand out, to improve them to the point where they stand out and really attract a qualified tenant who's excited about living in them. And what I mean by that, the bar's kind of low. So I don't have to work tremendously hard. I don't have to incredibly overinvest in my properties in order to make them stand apart. I really only have to get them above the bar significantly. And because the bar's so low here, I just think that's one nice thing about the market is that you can easily stand out. And that's one thing One Focus has done is we stand out for having clean properties, for treating people fairly, for providing the services we're accountable to. We also have a reputation for not accepting unqualified tenants and for not tolerating any shenanigans. But, that's a reputation we've built over time. And I've found it easy to, in a smaller town, become known for that. So there's a lot of of course, good and bad like there is with any market. But if you went to that sports tournament or you came to your kid's graduation at one of our local colleges and you got on Zillow and you got excited and you're getting ready to call me, think about those things. Think about you as an investor and what this being an older, smaller market would mean. Now, I'll tell you, if you think you're game for it, One Focus is probably the partner for you. We are well poised to serve a sophisticated and savvy investor from outside the region, but you'd have to call us and set that up and hopefully buy some property.